little, like when you have it on your book cover, people are going to ask.
Exactly.
She's like kind of a big deal in the book world.
Just a little bit.
A little bit.
Oh, this is going to be the best. Hi, and welcome to Literary Hype. I am Stephanie, your Literary Hype Woman, and today's author conversation was an absolute treat. Like, I don't say that lightly. A lot of these authors that I get to talk to are super fun, but it doesn't always happen that before you can even start asking questions, you already feel like you've made a best friend, and that is for sure Gretchen Schreiber. Before we even started filming, I complimented her eyeshadow and she brought up BTS, so I knew for sure she was my people and that we were about to have a really great time. And we did. Gretchen Schreiber is the author of Ellie Haycock is Totally Normal, which is a wonderful, wonderful book about a teenager and her dealing with disabilities and romance and kind of coming of age and dealing with her parents. And it's a lot of very teenage emotions, but also through the lens of someone with a disability and who's spending a lot of time in a hospital, which we honestly need more books like this. So read it. Gretchen has a really cool job, which we do get into, but it might have something to do with the little blurb on the corner. So definitely stay tuned and check out this conversation with Gretchen Schreiber. Welcome to Literary Hype. It is so exciting to have you on. For so many reasons, I feel like we're going to be besties in like the next 30 minutes.
It's already started.
It's already started because you are also a BTS fan. And I thought while scrolling and saw that you had Microcosmos. What is your favorite BTS song and who's your bias?
Oh my God, that's so mean. I feel like the correct answer and the only answer for this, well, there are two. But the song that got me into BTS was my friend had dragged me along to a BTS concert. So like, yeah, I know. It's like, it was a great way to be introduced, honestly. So Spring Day is my favorite.
You just like to cry.
I just like to cry, but also like, because I saw the music video at the concert and I was like, I think it's spelled differently. But that's like just like the idea of The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, which is this very famous sci-fi short story. And my friend, like, I will never forget, she like sitting here watching, like, enjoying the show, and she like pauses and like turns and is like, how do you know that short story? And I was like, doesn't everybody know The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas? And she was like, because the video is based on that short story. I was like, I'm in. You got a literary connection. So that's like my favorite. Idol, however, is probably like my most like jam. I play it all. It's my like hype song. Anytime I have to go do an interview, I'm like, Idol, come on. My bias is Jimin Park Jimin.
Because he's one of my two biases. Him and RM.
Ooh.
They're the two sides of my personality.
I feel like RM is like just a gateway bias, and then the people who stick with him, like it's deep.
It's the two sides of my personality. The bossy book nerd who doesn't like seafood and kind of accidentally breaks stuff all the time,
but also
who falls down all the time and is really sassy and goofy.
Also just loves crabs. Like not the weird crabs. Hates seafood, loves crabs.
He's just such an enigma.
It really.
How is he so smart?
I don't know.
I want him on my show.
Yeah. I would watch that. That would be an episode.
Like, I did a display at my bookstore of books that he recommends, and they sell so fast with his picture.
No. So I think my bias, my wrecker would be Suga Minyoongi.
Oh, that man.
Like, I feel like those are my two sides of myself of like, I'm either like tortured artist just continually creating, or I'm just like, hello, everybody, I'm here to make you smile. Da, 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 da.
See, there's so much connection between K-pop and BTS and books and authors. We all are obsessed with fictional or what men that'll never know we exist.
Correct. I mean, my group chat, my writer group chat of, of every internet person's fame right now is all BTS people. And so are we talking about BTS? Are we talking about writing? Are we talking about both?
Probably. That's why there's so many books that have K-pop stars in them now. Yeah. We need more conversations about this.
Or the number of people who thank BTS in their acknowledgements.
Christina Lauren.
My friend Rebecca Fabian has hers. Mine does not necessarily have BTS in the acknowledgements, but the first line of the acknowledgements has like 2 BTS shout outs.
I'm gonna have to go look at that.
You should look at it because like it's a deep cut. It's like it's a strong power thank you moment.
Okay.
And And then a not today moment.
Like, oh, not today is my jam.
I mean, also great. Like, oh, such a good.
No, not today.
Anyway, books.
Books. You have a book.
I do.
Anyways.
And back.
So for anyone who hasn't already seen Ellie Haycock is Totally Normal,
Yeah.
give us a little bit about what this book is about.
Yeah. So easiest way to say is that it's Breakfast Club in hospital. Would not know. I've never watched The Breakfast Club. The longer way to say it is about a girl who obviously is named Ellie, who keeps her high school life and her hospital life very, very separate. And what happens when a new illness sends her back to the hospital, and it takes a new group of friends and a new love interest to help her convince herself that it's not only possible to mix both of your lives, but also totally normal. Can you tell I wrote that for marketing?
What gives you that idea?
But yes, no, that's what it's about. It's just a girl trying to figure out what it means to be normal in an abnormal situation.
So something that I loved right off the get-go is that Jack does extemp. I did extemp.
Oh, I'm sorry. I feel like I throw Jack under the bus making him an extemp person. A little bit, mostly because my forensics coach read it and she was like, "Who is Jack?" And I was like, "Jack is just an amalgamation of every extemp speaker that I ever met who was a boy."
Okay, there's a very big difference.
There's a big difference.
Boy and girl extemp speakers.
Correct.
But I was very obsessed. It was in my username. Okay, I was extemp queen was part of my username in high school. Okay,
and so I mean, I had the boys who I knew who did extemp were making up their sources and quoting Dr. Gretchen Schreiber said blah blah blah.
nonsense.
Yeah, doing nonsense and just speaking for however long they had to do it. So that was kind of that's a Jack vibe. He's not a bad guy. He's just a guy.
Yeah, it makes sense. But so few people know about extemp.
Yeah.
And so I got very excited.
I feel like debate and speech is such a big topic for YA. And as somebody who was both a policy debater and a Lincoln Douglas debater and did speech and did all of these things, so few people actually know what debate and speech programs actually are or how they function. And I'm just anytime someone is like, "I know what this is," and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad."
It made me so happy. So Jack is her kind of boyfriend as she's going back to the hospital.
Yep.
But he doesn't really know what's going on.
Yep, and she is 100% never going to tell him.
Talk a little bit about the reality of trying to keep those two aspects of your life separate when you're going through these crazy medical situations.
Well, one, for me, it was very easy because my hospital was 8 hours away from my hometown. So there was no way that anyone from my high school was going to show up randomly at the place where I was having surgery. But I think it was also just one of those things of there's a very popular saying in high school when you do sports or you do something that's to those who've never done it, there's no explanation possible. To those who've done it, no explanation needed. And it's kind of like that in the hospital of to those who've done it, I don't need to explain this process to you. To those who've never done it, I don't even know where to start. It is such, and it's not that I don't know where to start. It's that I don't know where to start and not have people start looking at me differently of "Oh my gosh, that's so sad," or "That's so hard," or "I never would have been able to do that. I would have killed myself if I were you." And so immediately you sort of, once you start opening up about it, you sort of willingly, this sounds really gross, you willingly place yourself in a position to be made lower than your friends. And to be looked down on and pitied and all of these moments that really Ellie has no desire to be. She doesn't want to be seen as broken or needs to be fixed or pitied. She just wants to be seen as one of the guys, one of the people, one of her friends, as somebody who's competent at what she does and is really great at speech and fits in at high school and has her friends and yeah, I go to the hospital once a year and it's fine, everybody. No one look over here. And that was something really big for me too. Of it's really hard to talk about things that I don't know how to communicate that this was not quite the terrible pit of despair that people imagine it to be. I have a very complicated relationship with the hospital, mostly because of how I think people expect me to have a relationship with the hospital. And that is not my relationship with the hospital. It's my relationship with certain procedures. But like, I have very little fear of a hospital or medical like procedures or being like, let's go. Like, I'm often the person who I'm like, you have a medical crisis going on right now and you need to be comforted, do not come to me. Because my first question is being to be like, okay, so what's going on? And like, I'm going to get right down to business of like, what's the doctor say? What's the prognosis? Do you need a second opinion? When are you having surgery? What's going to happen? Like, what are the scans? What are the like, I'm very clinical and people are like, ah! And I'm like, I'm sorry, this is just like, this is where I go. Because like, for me, this is just normal.
So
anyway,
you got some Ryan in you.
I've got some Ryan in me sometimes. In my best days, I'm Ryan. My friends often will say, like, Gretchen, why didn't you warn me that this was what this was? Like, this test was. And I was like, I thought you knew what an MRI was. I thought you knew you were going to be going in a tube and laying there for like 40 minutes while like things go, you know.
They're so loud.
They're so loud. They give you earplugs. Like, I thought you knew. Sorry, I would have told you. Would have been your child life, your hospital adult life specialist.
You talked about like you mining your own medical files for inspiration. Was that like cathartic for you? Like, what was the emotional process for you kind of putting your story into a fictional format in this way?
I mean, I wish I could say it was it's like weird cathartic. Like, it was mostly like, I know that I need a medical backbone for this story. And I kind of know that like the goal of the story it's not necessarily about a happily ever after medically for either character, for any of them. I mean, maybe Luis was always going to have a happily ever after with it. Like, we love him, but that was always in his cards, you know, but like that. It wasn't really about them getting cures or getting to the end of this procedure. It was really about them getting okay with the fact that this is where their lives are. And like getting okay with being at the hospital or like living this way was sort of the goal. And so I chose something like from my own medical file that had that sort of like moment of, well, we did this thing and then we had the surgery and then it didn't work and what now? And you're still sick and, you know, you're sort of still sort of trying to triage it as best you can with like a medical hypothetical.
And you touched on somewhere in this.
Probably.
Somewhere I saw something about you talking about seeing yourself in a book. Talk a little bit about the importance of that for not just for you as an author and like putting your story out there like this, but for people who are also in medical situations that need a little bit of encouragement that they're not unusual.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start this off big and we'll go small and prove that I am once again just 5 TikTok sounds in a trench coat. You know that TikTok sound? You know that TikTok sound that's like, oh, look, books that aren't written by people like me and I still enjoy them. That is literally me walking into every bookstore and just holding my hands up and going, here we go. You know, I didn't grow up with anyone in fiction who remotely looked like me and had a happy ending. And by happy ending, I mean like not even like fell in love, had an adventure. I mean like just like made it to the end of the page still breathing. Like that's like quite the reality of like the situation. And so, and like the stuff that we have, like it's changing slowly as long as you're not visibly disabled, in which case we're still walking backwards. I got a lot of feelings. They're not great.
Are you that girl on Mean Girls?
I just have a lot of feelings. Look,
I wish we could make a cake with rainbows and butterflies.
She doesn't even go here. So when I sort of sat down, I feel like most contemporary writers right now was not always a contemporary writer, and I was a fantasy writer first and was like, I will write a contemporary book over my dead body. I'm not dead. Oops.
Are you sure? All right.
I mean,
is this the Matrix?
it might be the Matrix, I might be just too hard to kill, that whole baptized twice thing.
There you go.
Sorry, Mom, that was a joke. But I had this idea and I told my very good friend who is a contemporary writer, and she was like, I'm going to hold you to this, but you have to write this book. And I went, oh, no one's going to want this book because it's not going to be happy and okay. And she's like, it doesn't have to be. And so when I really sat down to write Ellie in like a very serious manner and not just like, well, here's an idea or here's like a chapter or a half a chapter or a character idea, I made a pact with myself that Ellie needed to be somebody that my 16-year-old self would read and like essentially like pass the sniff test. Like even if like obviously Ellie and 16-year-old Gretchen are not the same human being, surprisingly. And I know. Surprising.
I'm shocked.
Everyone is. I needed to be able to look at it and say, oh, I actually understand what's going on here and I understand these feelings, and I'm not going to shy away from the sort of complicated, not always okay feelings that you can have as a teenager, because I think it's important as like disabled people that like, okay, here's my soapbox. I don't know, girl. I think often we talk a lot about in diverse literature right now about joy and the idea of like having joy. And I think there is nothing more important than having books about joy for diverse audiences. But I also think for disabled people, we have been denied the right to own our own pain, and the painful moments and painful ideals of our lives have been mined and reproduced and profited on by people who are not us, and spread and have put out into the market really unhealthy ideas of what it means to be disabled, what it means to write a disabled book, and what it means to live a disabled life. I think as much as like, I say this a lot in the marketing for my next book, as much as Ellie was about seeing myself in a very real way, my second book is about remembering that you can also dream, because I think both are important. I think it's important for disabled writers to be able to explore the dark and sometimes hard emotions that happen. I mean, a lot of Ellie's journey is also rooted in the fact that like the things that she wants to do in life are not things that have ever been done, or not, I shouldn't say ever been done, have been done by very few people who look like her. And so the idea of being an actress is not just hard in that she understands that being an actress is hard. Auditioning is hard. You get told no a lot, but like then you add this layer on top of it of, but you're disabled, and we all know that like 99% of roles that even are disabled are played by able-bodied people who are made to pretend to be disabled. And so we're like doubly like, you can't play yourself and you can't play normal people. So what can you do? Anyway, again, soapbox. So yeah, like it was just really important for me to sit here and think that like if we're going to have an issue book, if I'm going to write a quote unquote issue book, that I'm gonna put it all there. I'm gonna be messy and a teenager and like just really root it in something that feels like I can see myself. And the catharsis that you mentioned in that is like both good and bad. Like there are so many there's so many messages. I was just like going through them today, even though they say don't read your reviews, and don't do it, authors, don't do it. But I was reading my reviews, and pretty much like a lot of like chronically ill or disabled people who were reading it was like, it's like one of the first times that like I could relate to this like wholeheartedly. And like that is so incredible. And then it's also heartbreaking to watch people be like, I just couldn't connect, or Ellie is such a Debbie Downer, or Ellie is such a bitch. Like, and I'm just like, okay, that I didn't need to see. Oh, this is why they say don't read reviews. Anyway, so it's like, it is cathartic, and it's like cathartic in that like Wednesday really believes in the book and like, you know, has been really, really great. Like I've heard so many horror stories from people, from like diverse individuals talking about their publishers just not like showing up for them or not doing the things for them. And like, I can't say enough nice things about Aileen at Wednesday, who's my editor, and like has just been a really great guide, and everything that she has suggested has been additive to the narrative, and never once has she said something that would make me go, ooh, we're gonna have to have a really hard conversation now, you know, and has been very open of like, if I say something wrong, please tell me. I do not mean it. Like, please educate me. And she's like, also, I know that that's bad, but I'm like, I have to get it. I get it. Like, you're never going to get education unless I do it. Like, unfortunately, sometimes when you're like the first couple people through the door, you get like the double whammy of being both like the first person to like batter down a door and then be like, okay, everybody gather around. Let's have a story time now. Like, anyway, I'm talking a lot. You're just like, yeah.
I mean, it's you're making so many valid points that people need to hear and need to think about in the landscape of fiction, in the landscape of books, in the landscape of life.
Yeah.
It's so important.
You know, I think like when I first started writing disabled people and I decided to make 90% of the cast disabled, my friend went, are there that many people who have disabilities? And I was like, I looked at her and I was like, how many people do you know who are disabled besides me? And then she started thinking about it and she went, that was a dumb question. And I went, yeah.
Progress.
Yeah. But it's like, yeah, it's like one of those things that I think sometimes we don't think about it, because I think a lot of times disabled people, we do a good job of masking, and we do, much like Ellie, don't look at us. We are fine. We are just like you.
Nothing to see.
Nothing to see. We are not the humans you're looking for.
And you touched on a little bit of Ellie's mess. One of those messy relationships is with her mother.
Oh.
So talk a little bit about crafting that and the reality of that situation of like mom's putting your story out there and you're trying to own your own life.
Yeah. Okay. So first I have to say this because I feel like I have to say this all the time. Ellie's mom is not my mother. Ellie's mom is not my mother. My mom and I have a great relationship. It was very much shaped by the hospital. We were thrown together a lot for this, for my entire life. Like, you know, dad had to work because, again, like much like Ellie, again, they are not my parents. This book is not my life. My dad had the job with the good insurance. So he got to stay home and work, and my mom and I went to the hospital. But for Ellie, I knew that I kind of wanted, the blog had always been a part of the book in some form or another. So I had written it originally as a blog, and then I did Pitch Wars and it became a newsletter, and then I sold the book and it became a blog again. And then it became an actual blog on the page. That was not included in the original, like it was like the biggest change we made during the editorial process. And the one thing that I really wanted to sort of show, and the one thing we worked on a lot, was Ellie and her mom's relationship throughout the story and how they just sort of keep hitting at each other until you have this big explosion. I think the one thing for me, I know it's very easy, and with all due respect, you can read Ellie's mom as the ultimate antagonist of the book. But I also think, and I can't remember because when you're an author and you write 5 million versions of your book sometimes, like you forget which ghost draft lives and which one is actually dead. But like the first victim of ableism are parents. And so a lot of what Ellie's mom talks about is actually inspired by my mom. My mom did lose her job because her boss gave her an ultimatum of you can go to your daughter's surgery or you can come to work on Monday. Yeah, you know, she had friends who didn't know how to relate to her child because they were having happy mom times. And she's like, well, I'm going back to the hospital with I had surgery at 6 weeks old. So like, you know, you get out of the hospital and it's like, we are making major life decisions out of the gate. And so I wanted to provide that context of like, this is a very real experience. I think her mom, and because I ended up, you know, we're all on TikTok now, apparently.
For now.
I've ended up too many times on the parents of disabled children TikTok, and it's a dark place. But
I don't even want to know.
but I see the same thing that I think I was trying to capture in Ellie's mom, is that these are women who are looking for support in a world that has shown them none. And they are looking for someone to say that it is okay and you are being a good mom and you can get through this. Because in real, God, I'm gonna cry, it's fine. Ooh. Because in real circumstances and people that they know, they may not have that. Whether that's from their partners, 90% of all marriages that have children with disabilities end in divorce, and not just for insurance reasons.
It's hard.
It's hard, and you add this like huge complication and whatever. But I then wanted to also then bring up the complication of when you make this your life, when you make your child your life, and you put it out there for all to see, what happens when that child wants to say no? And I think for me, and this maybe wasn't a true teenage feeling, and maybe more of a college age me feeling, because I was coming to understand something of what duty do I have to my parents, and what, like, looking back and seeing like what did my parents give up for me, and am I like if they're unhappy, is that my fault? Like, which I think Ellie has a lot of like really conflicted feelings. As much as she wants her mom to stop, she also realizes that this is the last thing her mom has. And that because she chose to keep Ellie, it's always a choice. And that's fine. Because she chose this, why does Ellie get to take this one last thing away from her? And I think that's a conundrum. But at the end of the day, I also would say, Ellie, it is your life, and your mom is violating your HIPAA rights.
I had that thought, but was like, is it okay since it's her mom?
I mean, literally, I have watched TikTok moms go through full medication. Like, just be like, and my child takes 25 milligrams of this. And I'm like, you were just putting all that medical information out there for anybody to find. Man. And I think it was also one of those things my mom and I talked a lot about. Again, this is not my mother. My mom did start a 501c3 when I was small for families of VACTERLs. And she ran a message board back in the days. Children, you don't know what that is, and that's okay.
It's okay. Mostly adults watch my videos.
Oh, great. Adults, you know what that is. And one of the things that would happen on her message boards is that parents would put their full slew of surgeries for their kids out on, and this is not a locked message board, mind you. And so, and some of the surgeries, like when you're dealing with VACTERLs and different letters, can get very personal. That would never be something that I would want somebody at a high school level or a middle school level to find and to be able to like taunt you with. And my mom has just been always very aware of that line of like, I'm trying to raise my child so that they can take over their life. Her whole thing was always like, no, I love you and I will always be here for you, but get out of my house. Like, you gotta launch. There's no failure to launch here. You gotta go.
Get out.
Get out. But I love you, but in the nicest way possible.
Go be an adult.
Go be an adult. You are a human. If I haven't raised you to be an adult and a human, then I failed my job. And so that like relationship of her mom not understanding that, but also needing and not understanding her own need for validation in a world that has shut her out, is basically two hurt people are both hurting each other. And it culminates in a moment that I am sure her mother regrets to this day. You know, which is that her parents got divorced because of insurance. I see that you all want those. I married someone to get my medical insurance, and I raise you getting divorced for your children.
Let's talk about another relationship.
Woo!
Your relationship with your boss.
I'm like, I don't know where we're going with this. My relationship with my boss. Yes, my very fancy boss.
Your very fancy boss who blurbed your book on the cover, and your boss is Reese Witherspoon.
That's right.
Talk a little bit about getting Reese to blurb your book.
So I've worked at Hello Sunshine since the late summer of 2017. And they always say, I went to film school before that, a while before that. And there was always this idea in film school that like when you meet very fancy people and they know you and that tangentially, like you could email them and they'd be like, oh, right, I will do you a favor. You get one favor from them. So I worked there for 5 years or 7 now. And kind of had always been writing and kind of always knew like I'm going to save my ass for something good. And when it came time for blurbs, obviously Wednesday was like, we know where you work. When do you want to like, ask the question? And I was like, I'll say what I can do. And it's asking, I made an ask to my like day-to-day boss and she handled it. And Reese was like, obviously, yes. So, and was super, super supportive and happy and like has just been a really big sideline cheerleader.
So tell us what you do at Hello Sunshine.
Oh gosh. So my official title is manager of books, and it is
the best title.
It's the best title. I mean, step up from my original title, which was bookworm. It's literally my first title there.
I need this job.
I have business cards that say like my Hello Sunshine email, bookworm. I read books and I help accumulate the top reads and that we will send to Reese for book club. And then my other job there, I help with Lit Up, which is our fellowship for diverse women and non-binary storytellers. So yeah, those are the two things I do at Hello Sunshine.
And I hear you read 10 to 20 books at a time. Like,
yes.
I read like 3 to 6, maybe 7 at a time. So 10 to 20, how do you keep all the stories straight?
I don't know. People ask that all the time. The only thing I can tell you is it was an innate talent I was born with. I got 2 talents. 1, I can read 10 to 20 books at a time and keep them all straight. And 2, I don't get hangovers. Yes, I've tried. It's also because we're adults here. But yeah, I used to read like Russian novels without the need of the like, what is it? Dramati personae in the front. Like I didn't need it. I was like, oh yeah, I know who this person is. I can bounce back and forth between these families. I got this. So yeah, it's just, they're all very like sort of different. And I don't know. I've always been a person, I'm a mood reader. So I'm always reading like 10 to 15 books at a time anyway. It just depends what I want to read. And then I'm always rereading something. I mean, I just finished 2 rereads this week. So
I wish I had time for rereads.
I just like, I finally have trained my Audible to just start my one re-listen. Just, it goes over. It just automatically flips back to the end. Like, we know where we're going, girl. And I'm like, yeah, you do. We've done this 10 times since February.
So you mentioned you do have a second book in the works.
I do.
What would you like to say about that at this point?
I mean, I get to say a lot of things. So it is one of those fabulous Taylor Swift lyrics as titles. It's called All the Stars Align. And I pitch it as like Enchanted meets Cyrano with some speculative twists. And it is about a disabled girl who belongs to a family where all the women in her family know their true love at first sight. And she is determined to have the most epic love story because that is what's going to make her fit into her family, finally, because she doesn't feel like she fits in. Her mom is a bit of a rebel, and more so than that, her parents are now in the middle of a divorce. Promise someday my parents will stay together. But this is like the first divorce ever in this family, and everyone is like, oh God, like... So she's determined to like prove that the blessing that as they call it, is not broken, and that she is not broken and deserving to be here. And so what happens when she finds the love of her life, falls flat on her face at their first meeting, and needs to convince her best friend, who she has not talked to in 6 months because he wanted a friendship break, that he needs to teach her the ways of romance. So that she can win the love of her life and have the life she's always dreamed of, which is fine until he confesses that he loves her and she should choose. She should give up on a love that fate has thought for her for a love that fate could never dream up. Oh, so a little magic, a little disability, a little
Romantic.
romance.
Awesome. Cannot wait to get my hands on that.
April 1st. It's not a joke. 2025.
And since this is Literary Hype and you are the biggest bookworm, what books are you hyped about?
Oh my God. Okay.
I'm going to limit you to one.
Yeah, you shouldn't. So, Family Reservations by Liza Palmer. I'm a huge Top Chef fan. If you love like Top Chef, cooking shows, whatever, and you wanted it to meet Succession and you wanted it with all ladies, like an all lady family, and you maybe wanted it to have a happy ending. I can't recommend this book enough. It was so much fun to read. Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto, which I just reread and finished my reread this morning. And it was like she doesn't make any bones about that this was fan fiction. And it's one of the few times that I think the AU of the fan fiction like fits so seamlessly into the world that she's writing about. And it was like, yes, that.
I love Julie Soto.
I also love her so much. It was so good. I'm like trying to think of like the things that I can talk about and the things that I can't talk about. And I think that's all I can talk about. The things that I'm really hyped about, I can't talk about.
Well,
the other things that I'm like hyped about.
Just shoot me an email later.
Yeah, I'll be like, there are a lot of people who are like, but couldn't you just tell us what's like in the list? Like what's in the long list? And I'm like, no.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk to Literary Hype about all the things.
This was so much fun. Thank you for listening to my soapboxes.
I love them.
And BGS. What I have to ask, we're gonna just like full circle, like, you know, bookend moment. What is your favorite song?
Fire is probably the one I listen to the most because that's a real good like let's go.
Fire.
But also
333 on Fire, best like dance, like hardest dance in all of K-pop history.
Run BTS is great.
Ugh.
I have the proof, like one of the anthology discs in my car. So it's just,
Oh yeah.
I love them.
No, I love
Are you excited for RM's new album?
I am. It's so.
It says alternative and I am losing my mind.
I'm like, sir, I need you to sit down. Like
You're in the military.
you're in the military. I was supposed to be free.
Remember that time we all thought we were going to save money while they were in the military?
Remember that time we thought we would have peace?
We know no peace.
We know no peace.
It's fine.
Like, this is what they say when they're like, I'm an army widow.
It's because we broke and still
We broke, we're still here. And we're still somehow, like, waiting for our men to come home from the war.
We're so delulu.
Yes, but he's also apparently the Salulu.
Thanks so much to Gretchen for taking time out of her Fierce Friday schedule to talk with me about her book, Ellie Haycock is Totally Normal. I loved this book. It is so fun and so poignant and I just want to hug this book. I'm going to hug this book. And Gretchen is also fabulous. Like, we ended up talking well after the interview ended, just hanging out, basically. Gretchen is an absolute delight. I could not love her more. Like, she is so fantastic. So definitely go check out Ellie Haycock is Totally Normal. And if you want to check this book out, which you should, as I've told you, you should check this out. The link to get a hold of this is down in the description below. So definitely check that out. And if you have not already subscribed to the Literary Hype channel, make sure you do that so you can stay on top of all the author conversations and Comic-Con content coming your way. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.